On Saturday night, Brett Baty had an awesome game. He hit 2 home runs. He drove in 5, but unfortunately, it all came in a loss.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, in a game where Tyler Megill put the Mets in a 4-0 hole, where the Mets went 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position, where Max Kranick gave up 2 runs in the 8th inning of a 1-run game, there was one player that was the shining star for the New York Mets, and that was Brett Baty, who single-handedly kept the Mets in the game and nearly led them to a victory. 2 huge home runs, 5 RBIs. He did it all himself, and it started in the 4th inning. You had Pete Alonso get a leadoff single. Brandon Nimmo popped out. Mark Vientos gets a base hit. Then a wild pitch puts 2 runners in scoring position for Luis Angel Acuna, and Acuna strikes out. So now Baty comes up with a lot of pressure, 2 runners in scoring position, a lineup that is yet to break through in the game, that's trailing by 4 runs, and he's got to come through with the hit. He is in an even count, 1-1 count, gets a sweeper low and in, able to time it perfectly, get a good barrel on it, drives it into right center field. It's looking like it might be a double that's going to score 2, but the ball just keeps carrying and carrying and carrying, and it gets just over the wall for a 3-run homer. And Baty's reaction was awesome. You know, he was sprinting around first base, heading to second base, sees the ball clear the wall, and just leaps and throws his fist. Just an awesome moment for a guy that deserves it, who has gone through so much, who has had a lot of struggles in the big league so far, that's finally starting to see the fruits of his labor, finally starting to see those results come through at the big league level. And the more that he gets confident, the better the performance can be. And Carlos Mendoza has talked about it since he came back. He said this last demotion was different than all the other ones. He said the other times when Brett Baty has been sent down in his career, it's been because of struggles. This was the first time that it was simply just a roster crunch where the Mets sent him down, but they sent him down with him knowing and them knowing that he can perform at the big league level, that he is a quality big leaguer. And now that he's back, he's starting to show it. And yes, it's still a small sample size. It was 10 games before he got sent down, and now it's been 3 games since he's been back. In the first one, he went 0 for 4. The last 2 have been awesome. Homered on Friday night, and then the 2 homers tonight. But it's going back to spring training, what we saw. It's a guy that has always performed in the minor leagues. This has always been in there for Brett Baty. It's just been a matter of tapping into it against big league competition, and now we're seeing it. And it's also not just Brett Baty has gotten some hangers over the last couple games, and he's done damage. Like, no, he's hitting some really tough pitches and, really doing a good job. Yeah, the sweeper that he hit out did get, some plate. The fastball that he hits out later in the game definitely got some plate. But it wasn't just pitches right down the middle on a tee, and he's going where it's pitched too. That sweeper comes in, he's all over it, he pulls the baseball, drives it, and then later in the game in the 8th inning, Mark Vientos is on. Again, there's 2 outs. Baty works himself into a 3-1 hitter's count, gets a fastball that's away and low, and still had plenty of plate, but Baty goes with it, and he gets a barrel on it and hits it where it's pitched and drives it out to left field. So you have 1 home run to left, 1 to right, 5 RBIs, 2 for 4 game. All of a sudden, Brett Baty's stats look a lot better. That's what's going to happen when you hit 3 home runs and you're still only at 66 at-bats on the season. So his OPS has shot up. It was at 598 when he got sent down. Now it's at the 746. His slugging percentage has gone from 352 to 485 in short order. So that's why you see that big spike in OPS. He's still only hitting 227, still only getting on base at a 261 clip, but the power all of a sudden is shining through. And I want to remind you guys, development is not linear. It's not just going to be a steady incline. Development for prospects can be up and down. You're seeing Mark Vientos go through it a little bit right now where he's not just rolling the way he did all of last season. He's having to grind his way through it. Now, if you actually look at the numbers, Mark Vientos, over really the past 4 weeks, has actually been swinging a pretty good bat overall, but you still factor in the abysmal start he had. And so it's just one of these things where guys need time to get their footing, but you are weighing out the development with a big league club that needs to win. And that's where those two things have to converge at some point. Last year for Vientos, they needed a third baseman. He stepped up. He got the opportunity. He established himself. Now Jesse Winker goes out after Jeff McNeil had been out. And so you've had these two injuries to left-handed bats in this roster open up some playing time for Baty, and he's finally starting to take advantage of it. If you look at their minor league careers for some of the Mets young players, I like to point this out just to remind you how good Brett Baty was as a prospect. Career OPS in the minor leagues, Brett Baty 889, Mark Vientos 849, Francisco Alvarez 892, Luis Angel Acuna 752, and then Ronnie Mauricio 751. So it is pretty impressive to see, looking back, how well Baty performed comparatively to some of these guys that I think fans hold in a higher regard. It shouldn't be surprising if Brett Baty ends up being a better hitter in the big leagues than a Luis Angel Acuna or a Ronnie Mauricio, because that's who he was in the minor leagues compared to those guys. But it's a completely different animal playing the big leagues. And so we'll see if Brett Baty can sustain this. But all of a sudden, this is another good option that Carlos Mendoza has, whether that is starting Brett Baty at third base over Mark Vientos and having Vientos get his playing time at DH. Obviously, he's going to still play third base against lefties. They're going to mix and match, and Mendoza's going to play everybody. But the lineup we saw tonight was a really interesting one where you got the infield of Acuna, Lindor, and Baty with Vientos at DH. I think that is the most complete this team can look, both defensively and offensively, when you still have Tyrone Taylor in center field for defense, when you have the defensive infield of Baty, Lindor, and Acuna, and the offensive upside that these guys still present. I think it's a really good lineup. It does have Jeff McNeil on the bench, but overall, I like seeing that configuration out there where you really have that good infield defense, because Baty is clearly a better defender than Mark Vientos at this stage. And look, he's held his own at second base too. So let's say Acuna just stops hitting altogether and McNeil isn't giving you much. There's also a world where Baty can plug in at second base and Vientos can be at third too. So Baty does give you a lot of flexibility if he can keep hitting. We'll see if he keeps hitting. Now, in this game, the Mets just missed their opportunities offensively. They just could not come through. They had their chances. The third inning, Francisco Alvarez was hit by a pitch. Tyrone Taylor reaches on a catcher's interference. So you had two runners on for Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, and both of them got out. Fifth inning, Francisco Lindor gets a base hit. Juan Soto is up, sitting on a 2-2 count. Lindor runs, probably to stay out of the double play, but also if Soto gets a hit, maybe he can score. Instead, Soto strikes out. Lindor does steal the base, but then Pete Alonso hits a line drive just right at John Birdie, the third baseman, and the Mets can't score there. Sixth inning, leadoff single from Nimmo, steals second base, so he gives you a chance in a one-run game with a runner in scoring position. Vientos strikes out, Acuna grounds out. Brett Baty comes up with two outs, hits the ball hard again, over 100, I think it was 108 miles per hour off the bat, but it was just right at Seiya Suzuki for a line out in the outfield. Seventh inning, Tyrone Taylor gets a single, Lindor draws a walk, so there's two runners on for Soto. He strikes out, and Pete Alonso grounds out to end that threat. Again, Baty came through in the eighth inning with that homer. Ninth inning, Jeff McNeil comes off the bench to pinch hit for Tyrone Taylor, has a great at-bat, sees 10 pitches, draws a walk to get a base runner on for Lindor. The Mets go to Jose Azocar to run, put some speed on the bases with the one-run game, trying to just get that run in, and Lindor hits a double play ball. And that was basically it. Soto grounds out to end the game. It's unfortunate for the Mets, who scored 5 runs, and a lot of times that's enough to win, but the pitching wasn't great in this one, and obviously the lack of a big hit outside of Baty's homers really shine through as they lose another one-run game. Throughout this stretch where the Mets have been playing a little more 500 baseball than we saw earlier in the season, a lot of these games have been close. And I think that's a testament to how good this team is, that they're always giving themselves a chance. But throughout the season, even if you win 100 games, you're going to lose 60, and you're seeing some games that just slipped through the Mets' fingers. This was definitely one of them. And the pitching was a big part of it. I want to talk about where the Mets came up short in that regard. Tyler Megill and Max Kranick giving up some runs. So I want to go through that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game because before tip-off and live, you're going to find player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, so fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I also like to look at awards futures for Major League Baseball, and the MVP race is interesting right now. Pete Alonso, your Mets favorite, he trails behind Shohei Ohtani in the NL MVP race when it comes to odds, but he's sitting at plus 600. Juan Soto's at plus 1100, but I like Lindor at plus 2400. Nice little bet to throw a sprinkle on if you'd like. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up because when you head to FanDuel.com and you place your first $5 bet, if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. Now, going through the pitching in this game, Tyler Megill had a rough start, particularly a rough first inning. Gave up a leadoff single to Pete Crow Armstrong, who stole second base, then advanced to third on a throw by Francisco Alvarez that ended up in the outfield. Then Megill walks Kyle Tucker, so he's sitting there with runners at the corners, nobody out. Gives up a base hit to Seiya Suzuki that brings in the first run. 4 batters later, after a strikeout, a walk, and a pop-up, Dansby Swanson gets a 2-out single to score another run. It was a diving stop by Brett Baty in the infield, but he could not make a play at first base. Everybody was safe, so there were still bases loaded. You do have to give Megill credit for getting a strikeout to get out of that jam. It could have been much worse considering the fact that he gave up 3 hits and 2 walks in that first inning. Only the 2 runs came across, but it did set the tone for the Cubs, who kept on tacking on. Megill had a good second inning, but in the third inning was in trouble again. Gave up a leadoff double, and then a single drove in another run. Fourth inning, Dansby Swanson got him for a leadoff homer in that frame. Altogether, you look at Tyler Megill's day, he goes 4 2/3. He gives up the 4 runs on 7 hits and 2 walks. He did get 7 strikeouts, but another rough start for Megill. First 5 starts of the season, Tyler Megill gave up only 3 runs. Last 3 starts, he's given up 11. Granted, 3 of those runs came in his outstanding start against the Nationals, where he was absolutely cruising through 6. Sent him back out there for the 7th, where they should have sent out Jose Budo to start the inning instead of to try to clean up Megill's mess. I blame Carlos Mendoza by extension, and a couple of those runs end up going on Megill's ledger that were allowed by Budo as inherited runs. But regardless, the last 2 starts we have seen Megill definitely fade a little bit, and it fits a narrative that might not entirely be fair, and that's the fact that Tyler Megill has these great Aprils, and then in May, it's like clock strikes midnight on a Cinderella story, but that's not exactly the case for Tyler Megill. Yes, I understand that's the narrative because in 2023, actually was it? No, 2022, it was when he filled in for DeGrom on opening day, had an outstanding April, was part of that combined no-hitter, but then he got hurt in May. It wasn't all just a lack of performance. The lack of performance was there in a start or 2, but followed by an injury. So how much did the injury impact the performance? We'll never really know. I think that it's an oversimplification to say, oh, yeah, he's just a good April pitcher. I think that what's happening right now is the league is adjusting to a guy that was doing really well to start the season. And guys have a scouting report now on how he's trying to pitch, and he's going to have to come up with a counter and change things up. And I think he did throughout this start. The first inning was the worst one by far. He definitely got better as the start wore on. He said after the game he felt like they were kind of keyed in on his two-seam, so went back to the four-seam more, had a lot more success. I think it's just a matter of figuring out what the opposition is trying to do to you and having those counters in place. You want to keep attacking the zone. He doesn't want to fall behind hitters and issue those walks that get him in trouble. But if teams are being really aggressive in the zone, then you're going to have to expand the zone a little bit and see if they chase. Because then all of a sudden you can pick up some easy strikeouts. I still think his stuff is good, and I'm not too worried just yet. But if you keep stacking bad starts, it's going to be a conversation at some point, because we are looking at Paul Blackburn on the mend and Frankie Montas and Sean Manaea, who hopefully will be back at some point in June, July, somewhere in there. And if everybody else stays healthy, the Mets are going to have some tough decisions on their hands, because they have 5 guys who have been rolling in their starting rotation this year. If Megill all of a sudden continues to scuttle and struggle, well, then at some point he gets right back on the hot seat. I still trust and believe his stuff and think he can figure things out, but it does ring some alarm bells that it's a couple bad starts in a row. We'll see how he adjusts the next time he gets back out there. Now, after Megill, Huascar Brazaban came on, and he was outstanding. Gets the final out of the 5th inning, has a 1-2-3 6th inning with 2 strikeouts, goes back out for the first batter in the 7th. A right-handed batter gets that out. Hansis Cabrera comes on and faces a couple of lefties. He gets both of them out. Pete Crow Armstrong and Kyle Tucker each flying out. And that's how the Mets got through 7 with a 5-4 score being right there. Fortunately, Max Kranick struggled in the 8th, gave up 2 runs, issued a couple walks, couple of hits. Quietly a real struggle lately for Kranick. I don't feel like it has gotten much discussion because he's been so good, and maybe because the runs he's allowed have come in inconsequential moments. But he has allowed runs in each of his last 4 appearances, Max Kranick has. So we'll see what progresses from here. I'm not going to give up on Kranick. It's a rough stretch, but he's definitely going through it a little bit. And I think, again, this could be another case of the league sort of figuring him out a little bit. The scouting report's out. This is a guy that wants to attack the zone. He might give you some pitches to hit. And so trying to figure out how to counter what the league is doing towards you is how he'll evolve and hopefully get to the point where he really is a solid, consistent relief pitcher for a long time for the Mets. For now, he's got to work through some things. It's definitely a couple of bad outings in a row, and those 2 runs are the difference in this game because of Baty's home run in the bottom half of that inning. It's that simple. Hindsight's 20/20, and who knows if Baty hits the home run if circumstances are different. Maybe it's a different pitcher on the mound for the Cubs. Who knows? But Kranick is definitely a guy that was amazing all year and is now struggling a little bit. Edwin Diaz at least pitched an easy 1-2-3 9th thing on 11 pitches, so that was good to see. But overall, the Mets come up just a little bit short. Now for Mother's Day, and for any moms listening, first of all, thank you for tuning into this show. Happy Mother's Day. This game, day game, going to be a fun one to see if the Mets can win this series. It'll be Griffin Canning versus Matthew Boyd. Boyd, left-handed pitcher, going up against Canning, obviously the righty. We'll see what the Mets do as far as their lineup. I'd imagine Torrens is going to be in there over Alvarez at catcher. Day game after night game. I would imagine that we see Jeff McNeil in the game after not playing in this one, and I would think that he probably plays either at second base with Acuna at third and Vientos DHing, or Vientos will be at third. Maybe it's Nimmo DHing, McNeil's in left, or they might give McNeil another DH day. My guess is we see Acuna at second, Vientos at third, McNeil in left, and Nimmo gets a day off his feet with the day game after the night game. That's what I would assume. But we'll see if the Mets can win a series. And it's that simple. It's a good Cubs team. No shame in losing one to them. But now pressure's on. Can you find a way to a victory? And I'm going to be very curious to see how Canning pitches against this Cubs team, because they do not make it easy on you. Can he hold up going up against probably the best lineup he's faced this year it'll be a fun game to watch. But in the final segment today, I want to give you a couple of injury updates and also talk about the best start of the season for a Mets prospect. We'll go through it all in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. You get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day, so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, before we talk about Jonah Tong's incredible pitching performance, I want to give you a couple of injury updates. Jose Siri is apparently on his feet again. Carlos Mendoza said he's been running, doing some work in the cage, which is wild because he broke his leg a month ago. But the guy did say he's a fast healer. Jose Siri must have been right about that. And it appears like he's going to be back maybe a little bit sooner than expected. We still haven't gotten any word of him getting into rehab games or anything like that. So I wouldn't say his return is imminent necessarily, but you never know. And on the surface, part of me says, well, okay, Jose Siri had some moments, but he really wasn't hitting that well. And Tyrone Taylor has clearly been outstanding lately and should be the starting center fielder. What would his role even be? Would he be taking playing time away from somebody who deserves it a little bit more? I really don't know, but I do know that Jose Azocar is still on this roster, so Siri would be an upgrade for sure. For now, let's just wait and see when he actually is getting to some rehab games before we start to try to picture his fit on the roster, because so much can happen, between now and whenever, he's actually available. But it was a surprising little tidbit that we learned, I think it was before the game on Saturday. Speaking of a rehab assignment, Ronnie Mauricio began his in Binghamton on Saturday, went 1 for 3 with that one hit being an RBI double. He played 7 innings at third base. Good to see Mauricio getting out there and playing at some tougher competition and down in Port St. Lucie. Wonder how long he will stay in Binghamton. I'd imagine maybe the Mets will let him stay there for a little bit and get up to speed and maybe get back to playing full games first before they send him along to Syracuse, but definitely a good step in the right direction. I still would not factor in Ronnie Mauricio into the Mets' plans this year, at least for the first half of the season. I still believe Ronnie Mauricio needs to get back on the field in Syracuse, playing full games on a consistent basis before we even broach the idea of Mauricio being a potential player that can impact this roster. But he is on the 40, and it will be interesting to see how he progresses here and ultimately how he hits. The guy hasn't hit consistently in a year or more than a year. So I wouldn't expect him to just hit the ground running either, but good to see him back on the field. Now, with all that said, that was game 1 of a doubleheader that Ronnie Mauricio was in. Game 2 of that doubleheader for the Binghamton Rumble Ponies was special, as Jonah Tong was sensational. And it started from pitch 1. He was dialed in. He struck out the side in the first inning, added 2 more strikeouts in the second and the third innings, had to settle for just 1 strikeout in the fourth, but then he got it right back in the fifth, striking out the side again. Then the sixth inning, he added 2 more strikeouts. So through 6 innings pitched, Jonah Tong had not issued a walk or a hit, and he struck out 13 of the 18 batters that he faced. He was at 86 pitches. It was a 7-inning game because in the minor leagues, when they play a doubleheader, it's 7-inning games. So they sent him back out there for the 7th to try to finish off the perfect game. But it took 13 pitches to get the first 2 outs. And sitting at 99 pitches, unfortunately, they pulled him from the game. TJ Shook came in, got a strikeout, and finished it off. But Tong 1 out away from perfection by himself. First time the Mets have had a perfect game, I believe, ever, because I don't think the big league club's done it, certainly. And first time they've done it in the minor leagues. And after the game, when asked about getting pulled, Jonah Tong said when he came up to the mound, I'm like, one pitch, just trying to get my best sell. He said, if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't have done it the other way either. So he does understand why they had to pull him. This is just what they do nowadays to pitching prospects when they get to 100 pitches. That's it. But it's still unfortunate. I know it's a meaningless game. It's a 7-inning game in a doubleheader. Why does it matter? But that's a game he's always going to remember, and he's always going to wish he had finished it. I mean, that's just the way it works. I still remember, not that I was pulled, a Little League game that I played when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. And we threw a combined perfect game because at the time, I guess they were still trying to protect our arms in Little League. You could only pitch 3 innings. And my best friend at the time, Brent Kessinger, started for us, got us the first 9 outs. I came in and got the final 9 outs, and we had a perfect game. Remember, it was the Pittsburgh Pirates of the Little League. Terrible team. We had 17 strikeouts of the 18 outs. The only out that we got was a ground ball hit to me. Still one of my crowning achievements, that I was part of a perfect game. But I even remember in travel ball, trying to finish off shutouts or even just a complete game. And when you get through 5 innings and you're that close, just, making your case. You want to stay out there. You want to finish it. So I can imagine Jonah Tong in that moment, knowing he was 1 out away and just thinking, hey, 1 pitch. I know I'm at 99. Let me throw 1 pitch and throw it right down the middle and hope the guy hits it hard somewhere where you have a fielder and you can get the perfect game. But in the end, it doesn't take away from the accomplishment. An incredible start by Jonah Tong, who strikes out 13 of 20 batters and retires them all. And it is another dominant performance on a string of really good starts for him lately, where he's just really flushed. 2 bad starts that opened up his season where he gave up 3 runs apiece. And now he has been much better over his last couple. 3rd start of the year, he gives up 1 run and 4 1/3, strikes out 9. Then he had a start where he allowed just 1 hit, issued 1 walk, and struck out 10 in 4 innings of work. Putting that into context, it's 12 outs in 4 innings, 10 of them via the strikeout. So pretty impressive. Last time out, again, it was 4 innings of work, allowed 1 run on 4 hits, 3 walks, struck out 8, and then this 13 strikeout performance. This year, Jonah Tong now has a 2.57 ERA in 28 innings pitched. He has 51 strikeouts. To put that into context, 28 times 3 is 84. So of 84 outs he's recorded this year, 51 have come via the strikeout. That's 60% of his outs have been on strikeouts. He's also struck out nearly 45% of the batters that he's faced. The only pitcher in the minor leagues with more strikeouts this year is Jacob Misiorowski of the Milwaukee Brewers, an absolutely disgusting pitching prospect in his own right. So this is another outstanding effort by Jonah Tong that rises his stock. On yesterday's show, I did 5 prospects whose stock is on the rise this year. I didn't include Jonah Tong because Jonah Tong had a breakout season last year where he went from low A to double A in a season and was outstanding. And that was really his big stock rising moment. And I felt like this year, prior to this start, his stock was a little bit neutral. He's still been striking out a lot of batters, absolutely. But I still was just viewing him in a similar light to the way I did going into the season. But now, I mean, what a performance. It does make me feel a little bit better because I had Jonah Tong ahead of Nolan McLean on my preseason top 10 prospect list. I had McLean 1 spot behind Tong. I had them pretty much neck and neck, but I took Jonah Tong as the prospect I liked more at the time. Now I would say that it has flipped with the way Nolan McLean has started this season. The fact that he has more of a complete arsenal. He's got, maybe a better chance just because Jonah Tong's bread and butter is a fastball, and it's a fastball that gets great ride up in the zone, really tough pitch to hit. But the more advanced you get and the next levels that he faces, guys are going to be able to catch up to the fastball more. So Jonah Tong has to work on his other wrinkles to his fastball to keep people off of the heater. Now, he's always had a great 12-6 curveball that he pairs with it, but he's needed another pitch. The changeup is an improved offering for him. So that could be his weapon to help get lefties out. And with that, Jonah Tong with the 3-pitch mix might be fine to stay as a starting pitcher. And he very well could be a guy that is a real impact arm for the Mets. Right now, I would still say it's Brandon Sproat and Noel McLean as the top 2 pitching prospects in this system, with Jonah Tong right behind. But he is a really exciting arm. He's still only 21 years old, and I'll be very curious to see where his development goes from here. How long does he stay in Double-A? When do the Mets feel like they have to push him up to get him challenged in Triple-A? And really, I'm just very curious to see what happens next year, because all of a sudden there's a homegrown rotation building for the New York Mets, because you have Sproat McLean or McLean. I've been messing that up for years. It's McLean apparently, not McLean. But you have those 2 guys. You have Tong. You have Christian Scott, who'll be ready off of Tommy John. Got a lot of irons in the fire. And that's not even counting, Kodai Senga still under contract, and still having David Peterson, Tyler Megill under team control, and Clay Holmes will still be under contract. So the Mets are Sean Manaea too. You forget about him, Frankie Montas. It's a team all of a sudden that's getting pretty loaded in the pitching department, and it's really good to see. Jonah Tong goes perfect, 6 2/3, so close, but absolutely awesome for him, and we'll see how he follows it up. Really good start. So on tomorrow's show, I'll be breaking down the final game of this series, Mets versus Cubs. Also, I'll be looking ahead to Mets versus Pirates, and I don't think we'll have time yet to do stock down on some of the top prospects who have struggled this season, but definitely we'll be doing that to give you sort of an accompanying segment to the one I did on yesterday's show, where I broke down the top 5 prospects whose stock is up this year. So make sure you're tuning in every day so you don't miss out on that. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. If you want to stay up to date with everything going on in the baseball world, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. This is the show that's going to take you around the league with insight from all of our local experts and a couple hosts that'll take you along the ride. You can find Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel, as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.